My name is Blair Calloway. I'm 32, and I used to think the worst thing my stepmother ever did to me was make sure I never forgot my place. I was wrong. The worst thing she did was teach my father how to watch it happen. Quietly, politely, like it was the weather. If you've ever grown up in a house where love is handed out like invitations to an exclusive party, you know exactly what I mean. My dad, Robert, remarried when I was 8. My mom had been gone for a while by then, gone in that way families talk around, like if they don't say her name too clearly, the absence won't echo. Dad brought home Patricia like a new rule book. She came with 2 kids, Stephanie, now 28, and Brandon, now 26. From day one, the message was simple. They were the real ones. I was included the way a restaurant includes parsley. Dad owned a small accounting firm in suburban Michigan. It did fine. Nothing flashy, but enough to keep up the appearance of upper middle class stability. Patricia worked as a dental office manager until the second she got that ring. Then, like magic, she became a stay-at-home mom with so much to manage. What she managed mostly was the narrative. Stephanie got dance lessons, pageant entry fees, and a brand new car at 16. Photos in the driveway like a commercial for a life I wasn't invited into. Brandon got hockey gear, travel team fees, and a gaming setup that cost more than some people's rent. Me, I got hand-me-downs from Dad's clients' kids and a lecture about building character. Patricia loved that phrase. She said it with the warm smile of a woman who never had to build hers. When Stephanie wanted private college for fashion merchandising, Dad and Patricia took out loans without blinking. When Brandon decided film production out of state was his calling, they somehow found the money. When I got accepted to State University for engineering, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table, same table Stephanie took Instagram photos on later, and told me, gently, that student loans would teach me financial responsibility. I remember nodding like a good daughter. I remember swallowing the heat behind my eyes. And I remember Patricia washing a dish slowly, like my future was a mess she didn't want to touch. So I worked. 3 jobs through college. Morning shift at a campus coffee shop. Afternoon tutoring for other engineering students, weekend tech support for local businesses who needed someone to explain why turning it off and on again actually worked. I slept 5 hours on a good night. I lived on instant noodles and free food from campus events. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and a job offer from a major automotive technology company. Stephanie dropped out after 2 years to pursue social media influencing. Brandon changed his major 4 times before graduating with a general studies degree he never used. But somehow, I was still the one who needed financial responsibility. And the truly twisted part? How they reacted to my wins versus their failures. When I landed that engineering job, Patricia smiled and said, "Well, that's nice, dear." Then, mid-sentence, she turned to Brandon like I hadn't even spoken. "Brandon's working on his YouTube channel now," she said, glowing. "He's going to be huge." His channel had 847 subscribers. Most of his videos were him reviewing video games while eating fast food like it was a personality trait. When I bought my first house at 25, a modest 3-bedroom ranch I'd saved for, Patricia said I was showing off and making Stephanie feel bad about still living at home. Stephanie was 21, working part-time at a boutique, spending more on clothes each month than I spent on groceries. I learned not to argue. Arguing in that house didn't change the rules. It just made you the villain for noticing them. Then, 3 years ago, everything shifted. I got promoted to senior project manager. My salary nearly doubled. In Michigan, that kind of money doesn't just pay bills, it buys breathing room. I was making around $160,000 a year, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was sprinting uphill with weights on my ankles. I bought myself something ridiculous. A used Bentley Continental GT. Not because I needed it, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because 8-year-old me, watching Stephanie unwrap a new car while I pretended I didn't care, deserved one loud, unapologetic symbol that I had made it anyway. Around that same time, I noticed my dad looking wrong. Not tired, not stressed in the normal way adults get when they have a busy week. This was different. This was the kind of stress that makes a man's face look like it's folding in on itself, like he's trying to disappear. During one of our rare one-on-one moments, I asked him what was going on. He hesitated. Then he admitted the truth, like it physically hurt to say it. They were drowning financially. Their house, a 4-bedroom colonial in a nice subdivision Patricia insisted on 10 years ago, was mortgaged to the max. Between that mortgage, the student loans they'd co-signed for Stephanie, Brandon's never-ending education detours, and Patricia's spending habits. They were about 3 months from foreclosure. I watched my father, my stubborn, proud father, sit there looking broken. And something inside me, the part that still wanted his approval, still wanted him safe, made a choice before my brain caught up. I offered to cover the mortgage. All of it. $2,400 a month, directly to the mortgage company. But I had conditions. Patricia and the kids could not know, because I already knew what would happen if they did. I'd go from outsider to ATM overnight. I didn't want their sudden kindness. I didn't want their fake gratitude. I wanted to help my dad, not fund the people who had spent my entire life reminding me I was optional. Dad agreed immediately. Probably too fast. Probably because desperation makes pride very quiet. That was 3 years ago. 36 mortgage payments. 86 foreign. And not one thank you, because not one of them knew. Instead, I watched Patricia renovate the kitchen I was paying for, telling everyone about Dad's bonus. I watched Stephanie host Instagram photo shoots in the backyard I was financing, captioned, "Blessed to have grown up in such a beautiful home." I listened to Brandon complain about his small bedroom in the house I kept from being taken by the bank. And I kept paying, because Dad was family. Because family helps each other. I didn't realize that philosophy only works if everyone agrees you belong. Then Christmas came. In November, Patricia sent a group text about holiday plans, big family gathering, everyone sleeping over Christmas Eve, presents Christmas morning, traditional, cozy. She even mentioned they'd renovated the guest rooms and were excited to host everyone. I RSVP'd, yes. I hadn't missed a family Christmas yet, despite the way I was always treated like a guest who'd overstayed. Dad always looked disappointed when I left on Christmas night, so I thought maybe staying over would feel normal for once. I drove up Christmas Eve in my Bentley, trunk full of carefully chosen gifts. A designer handbag Stephanie had been posting about, a camera lens Brandon claimed he needed for content, a spa package for Patricia. And for Dad, a vintage watch he'd once admired years ago, quietly, like he didn't think he deserved to want it. I spent about $2,000 total, because that's what you do for family. I pulled into the driveway around 6 p.m. The house looked like a holiday catalog. Every window glowing, wreaths everywhere, a massive tree visible through the front window like a promise. Stephanie opened the door, glanced at the Bentley, and immediately said, "Wow, must be nice to waste money on expensive cars while some of us are struggling." This from the woman who'd just posted a Miami weekend trip. Patricia came bustling over, air-kissed near my cheek without touching me, and took the gift bags right out of my hands. "Oh, you shouldn't have," she said brightly. Then, quieter, like a little private knife, "Let me put these under the tree with the real family's gifts." The real family's gifts. Dad was in the kitchen, looking uncomfortable, and still saying nothing. Dinner was the usual performance. Patricia's famous prime rib, everyone praising it like she invented beef. Stephanie talking about social media metrics. Brandon explaining his new strategy that was definitely going to make him viral this time. When I mentioned my team had secured a major contract with a European automotive manufacturer, Patricia cut me off mid-sentence. "That's interesting, dear," she said, already turning. "But Brandon, tell everyone about your new editing software." After dinner, gifts. Stephanie looked at the designer bag and said, "Oh, this is last season, but I guess it's the thought that counts." Brandon barely looked up from his phone. Patricia stared at the spa package like it was an oil change coupon. Only Dad reacted like a human being. His eyes went a little misty when he opened the watch. "This is the same model my father wore," he said quietly. "Thank you, sweetheart." Patricia immediately jumped in, sharp as ever. "Well, we can't all afford expensive vintage watches. Some of us have to budget for actual necessities." I sat there, smiling politely, while the irony practically screamed. Around 10 p.m., people started getting ready for bed. That's when Patricia clapped her hands like a camp counselor. "Okay, everyone, bedroom assignments," she announced. "Stephanie, you're in the blue guest room. Brandon, you're in the green guest room. The master suite is obviously ours." I waited. 4-bedroom house, 2 guest rooms, 1 master. That left, I cleared my throat. Where am I sleeping?" Patricia looked at me like I'd asked her to do calculus. "Oh, right." She waved a hand like I was a minor inconvenience. "Well, the guest rooms are for family, obviously." My stomach dropped, even though I'd seen it coming. Even though a part of me had always known. "You can sleep in the garage," she continued. "There's an old couch out there from when we renovated. Should be fine for one night." The garage. Unheated. Michigan. December. It was 19 degrees outside. Dad finally spoke up, small, weak. Patricia, that's not really. The guest rooms are for family, she repeated, firmer now, and gave him that look that ended conversations. Blair's a grown woman. She'll be fine for one night. Stephanie smirked. Brandon was already halfway upstairs, not even interested enough to pretend I mattered. Dad looked like he wanted to say more. Then he settled for an apologetic shrug. And in that moment, standing in the living room I had been secretly financing for 3 years, I felt something inside me go very, very still. I looked at the tree, at the presents, at the polished floors, at the house that should have been foreclosed on years ago without me. And I heard Patricia's words again. The guest rooms are for family. I smiled, calm, controlled, like an actress finally hitting her mark. Perfect, I said. The garage sounds great. I walked into the garage like I was walking into a decision I'd already made. The door shut behind me with a soft click, too quiet for what it meant. The garage smelled like cold concrete and old cardboard. There were half-empty paint cans along one wall, a leaning ladder, and a dusty plastic bin labeled Christmas in Patricia's neat handwriting, like she owned the concept of joy itself. Dad was right about the couch. It was a bulky old sectional shoved against the far wall, like an afterthought. In the dim light, I could see the dust on the cushions, the faint gray film that comes from neglect. I took one step closer and stopped. There were little specks on the fabric. Not crumbs. Not lint. Something worse. Something that made my skin tighten. Mouse droppings. And the air was sharp enough to sting the inside of my nose. I could see my breath. Somewhere under the door, a blade of winter wind slid in, hissing like it had something personal to say. Patricia expected me to curl up on that couch in 19-degree weather and call it fine, because I wasn't family. I stood there for a long moment, holding my overnight bag, listening to the muffled sound of laughter from inside the house. Then I looked at my Bentley. It sat there like a private joke, sleek, warm, expensive, and mine. I bought it because I wanted something in my life that didn't require permission. And suddenly the contrast was almost funny. The house I'd been paying for was cold to me. The car I paid for was ready to protect me. So I made a choice. I went back to the Bentley, opened the rear door, slid into the back seat, and shut it gently. I started the engine. The heated seats kicked in within seconds. Warmth bloomed under my thighs, spread up my back like a quiet hand pulling me out of humiliation. The climate control hummed. The windows fogged slightly, sealing me off from the freezing air and the family that had never quite been mine. I reclined the seat, pulled my coat over me like a blanket, and for the first time in years I felt peace. Not the fragile kind, not the kind you have to earn by swallowing your feelings and smiling through disrespect. Real peace. The kind that comes when you stop hoping the people who hurt you will suddenly become different. I stared at the ceiling of the car, and I realized I wasn't angry. Anger would have meant I still cared enough to want them to understand. This wasn't that. This was the feeling you get when you've been forcing yourself to read a book you hate for years, telling yourself it'll get better, telling yourself you just have to push through, and then you finally close it and think, I don't care how this ends. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A group text. Patricia, everyone settled? Breakfast at 8. Don't be late. Even now. Even while she'd assigned me to a garage like a punishment, she spoke to me like staff. I didn't respond. I opened my notes app instead, and my thumbs started moving like they'd been waiting for permission. Mortgage payments, month by month, 36 of them. I didn't do it because I wanted to punish anyone. I did it because I needed to see the truth in numbers. Clean, undeniable. 2,400. 2,000. Over and over until the total at the bottom looked like a small betrayal. 86 Ford. Almost 90 grand to keep a roof over people's heads who made me sleep next to mouse droppings. I scrolled through my bank history, cross-checking dates. Then I started listing memories next to them, like receipts. March. Patricia tells Linda, we've been doing so much better lately. June. Stephanie posts summer glow-up in my dream home. September. Brandon complains about needing more space. November. Kitchen remodel bragging. And then, December. Guest rooms are for family. I stared at that line for a long time. My mind replayed it in Patricia's voice, crisp and final. The guest rooms are for family. My chest felt oddly calm, like a door had finally closed. I opened my banking app. The mortgage auto payment was there, scheduled like it always was, like a leash I'd been holding willingly. My finger hovered. I thought about Dad's face earlier, the way he looked uncomfortable, but relieved I didn't fight. The way he followed me into the garage and said, I can talk to her. He could have talked to her at any point in the last 25 years. He didn't. I thought about how he let Patricia call me not family without correcting her. And something in me sharpened, not into rage, but into certainty. If I wasn't family enough for a guest room, I wasn't family enough to fund their lifestyle. I tapped the auto payment. I selected cancel. A confirmation screen popped up, almost too polite. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Yes. I hit confirm. My heartbeat didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. I just felt done. Like my body had already mourned this family years ago, and my mind was finally catching up. At around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Payment canceled. A little notification, so casual it almost made me laugh. 36 months of quiet sacrifice ended with one line of text. I set my phone down on the seat beside me and stared out the windshield into the dark garage. And then, for the first time in a long time, I slept like I didn't owe anyone anything. The next morning, I woke to a loud banging on the garage door. Blair, breakfast, don't be late. Patricia's voice cut through the cold like a command. I climbed out of the Bentley slowly, stretched, and adjusted my coat. The garage air hit my cheeks like a slap, but I felt strangely insulated, like the night had wrapped something around my spine. When I walked into the kitchen, they were already seated at the table. Dad at the head, Patricia to his right, Stephanie and Brandon half asleep on either side. Patricia looked me up and down and wrinkled her nose. Did you actually sleep in your car? I smiled pleasantly. The couch in the garage was filthy, I said, and since the guest rooms are for family only, the car seemed like the logical choice. Stephanie laughed like I was entertainment. You slept in your car? That's so pathetic. Is it? I asked, genuinely calm. I thought it was practical. Good thing I bought a comfortable one. Brandon muttered, barely lifting his eyes from his phone. Good thing you waste money on expensive cars while people are struggling. I looked at him for a beat. He didn't even realize how close struggling had come to being real for them. How many times it had been stopped by me, quietly, monthly, like clockwork. Patricia started serving her famous Christmas morning casserole, acting like she hadn't just tried to exile me to a freezing garage. Well, she said tightly, you're here now. Let's eat before it gets cold. We ate mostly in silence. Dad tried to talk about football. Nobody cared. And I watched him. Watched the way his eyes didn't quite meet mine, like he was afraid I might say something that would crack the illusion in front of everyone. After breakfast, we moved into the living room for more gift opening. This round was just immediate family before the extended relatives arrived. Dad handed me a nice set of tools for my garage. Thoughtful, actually. I murmured thanks. Stephanie gave me a gift card to a chain restaurant, the kind you grab last minute at a pharmacy. Brandon gave me nothing. Forgot, he said, like it was a joke I was supposed to accept. Patricia gave me a pair of discount store socks. And then I watched them open gifts from each other, clearly expensive. A new laptop for Stephanie, a gaming console for Brandon. Jewelry for Patricia that probably cost a month of Dad's salary. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, watching the imbalance like it was an old movie I'd seen too many times. By 11 a.m., the extended family started arriving. Aunts, uncles, cousins, noise, hugs, wrapping paper, perfume, and the familiar chaos of people who only see each other when there's food involved. Patricia's sister Linda arrived with her family, and Patricia immediately launched into her performance. We just finished the kitchen remodel, she bragged, leading Linda toward the countertops like it was a showroom. Quartz, new appliances, the works, cost a fortune, but totally worth it. Linda's eyebrows lifted. How did you afford that? I thought you were having money troubles. Patricia waved a hand. Oh, that was years ago. We've been doing so much better. Then, with a bright little laugh that made my stomach twist. Honestly, we're even considering a vacation home in Florida, just looking at properties. A vacation home, Florida. I sat in the corner of the living room, holding a paper cup of eggnog that suddenly tasted like metal. Dad's eyes flicked to me, and then he looked away. Because he knew. He knew exactly how wrong this sounded. He knew he was letting her brag in a house that should have been gone without me. And he still said nothing. Around 1 p.m., when the house was full of noise and wrapping paper, I finally stood. I walked over to Dad and leaned down close enough that only he could hear me. We need to talk outside. His face tightened immediately. He followed me to the back deck, the cold hitting us like a wall. The air was sharp, the kind that makes your lungs feel too big for your chest. I didn't waste time. I canceled the mortgage payment, I said quietly. Dad went white so fast it was like the blood evacuated his face. What? He whispered. The automatic payment, I clarified. The one I've been making for 3 years. I canceled it this morning. His mouth opened, closed. Blair, you can't. I can, I said, and I did. His eyes darted toward the window like he was terrified someone would see us. But we can't afford. I looked at him steadily. Not my problem anymore. His shoulders sagged like a man being asked to carry something he'd been pretending didn't exist. I let the silence sit between us. Then I said the line that felt like a blade sliding into place. I slept in the garage last night because your wife decided I'm not family. The guest rooms are for family, remember? Dad's eyes filled. And for a second, just a second, I saw the father I kept hoping still lived somewhere inside him. But then his voice broke. Please, he said. Just give me time. Don't do this during the holidays. I actually smiled. You mean like how Patricia made me sleep in the garage during the holidays? He had no answer. So I gave him the truth, clean and final. I transferred $2,400 every month for 3 years, I said softly. That's $86,400 to keep your house from foreclosure. His breathing hitched. He was crying now. I know, he whispered. I know she was wrong. I should have said something. Yes, I said. You should have, but you didn't, not once. His hands shook. Blair! You're going to explain to Patricia why the bank is calling, I continued, still calm. And when she asks how you've been paying the mortgage, you're going to tell her the truth. Dad looked like he might collapse. Merry Christmas, I said quietly. Then I turned and walked back inside. I grabbed my coat, my overnight bag. Patricia intercepted me in the foyer like she owned the exit. Leaving so soon? She asked, sweet as poison. We're about to do Christmas dinner. I'm good, I said. Places to be. Patricia's smile tightened. Well, don't be a stranger. We love having you around. I looked at her, really looked. This woman who'd spent 25 years making sure I knew I didn't belong. Who'd just put me in a garage like a punishment. I nodded once. I'll see you around. Then I walked out, got into my Bentley, started the engine, and drove away from that house with a certainty in my chest that felt like freedom. The silence afterward felt unnatural at first. No texts, no passive-aggressive group messages, no carefully worded guilt disguised as concern. Just quiet. I didn't realize how much noise my family had been making in my head until it stopped. I spent the rest of that week somewhere warm, emotionally, not geographically, with Ethan, my boyfriend. He wasn't flashy. He didn't try to fix things or offer grand speeches about forgiveness. He just listened, which turned out to be the most radical thing anyone had ever done for me. We were curled up on his couch the night I finally told him what really happened. The garage? He repeated, eyebrows lifting. They actually told you to sleep in the garage? Unheated, I said. 19 degrees, mouse droppings. He sat up slowly like his body needed to catch up to his brain. And you were paying their mortgage. For 3 years. He exhaled, long and controlled. Blair, that's not a misunderstanding. That's cruelty with good manners. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until my throat tightened. I told him about canceling the payment. He didn't flinch. He didn't ask me if I was sure. He just nodded once and said, Good. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're honest. That was it. No lectures, no pressure. Just support. And for a few days, it almost felt like the world had reset itself. Then mid-January arrived. The phone started ringing. The first call was from Dad. 8:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. I watched it vibrate on my desk at work until it stopped. Then again at 8:17. Then a voicemail. Blair, please call me back. The bank is calling about the mortgage. We need to talk. I deleted it. He called again the next day. And the next. Each voicemail sounded a little more panicked than the last. By Friday, he wasn't asking anymore. Please, he said in the last one. They're talking about foreclosure. I didn't respond. I went to meetings, reviewed project timelines, drank my coffee, lived my life. For the first time in years, their crisis wasn't the center of my gravity. Then Patricia called, the first time she'd ever dialed my personal number. I answered, not because I wanted to help, but because I wanted to hear what tone she'd choose when she thought she was still in control. Blair, she said stiffly, we need to discuss something. I said nothing. Your silence can terrify people who are used to talking over you. Your father tells me you've been helping with the mortgage? I let the quiet stretch. There seems to be some sort of mix-up, she continued. The bank is saying we're behind, but Robert insists everything should be fine. The payment stopped, I said calmly. What do you mean stopped? I mean, I'm not making it anymore. Her breath caught. You've been paying our mortgage? She asked, like she was trying to solve a riddle she didn't like the answer to. For 3 years, I said, $2,400 a month. I could practically hear the math slamming into her ego. But why would you? Because Dad was about to lose the house. Silence. If we had known, she started, voice shifting, softer now, we would have treated me better, I finished. Probably. Funny how that works. That's not fair, she snapped. We didn't know you were sacrificing for us. I wasn't sacrificing, I said. I make enough that it barely affected my budget. That threw her. Then what is the point? She demanded. The point, I said evenly, is that you made me sleep in the garage on Christmas Eve because the guest rooms were for family. Her tone hardened. That was just logistics. We didn't have enough rooms. You had 2 guest rooms, I replied, and 3 guests. The math only fails if one of those guests doesn't count. She was quiet for a beat, then angry. So you're going to let us lose our house because your feelings got hurt? I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. I paid your mortgage for 3 years, I said. I think I've been generous enough. You're being incredibly selfish. Selfish is renovating a kitchen and planning a Florida vacation while someone else pays your bills without complaint. She hung up on me. Brandon called an hour later. Dude, what the hell? He said without preamble. Mom's freaking out. Sounds stressful, I replied. Can't you just keep paying like you have been? Nope. But where are we supposed to go? Not my problem. That's cold, he snapped. We're family. I laughed. Funny. Your mom didn't think so on Christmas Eve. He swore and hung up. Stephanie didn't call. She texted. I hope you're happy ruining Christmas and destroying our family. I replied with one sentence. I didn't ruin Christmas, I just stopped paying for it. She blocked me. The messages didn't stop after that. Dad called every few days, his voice growing hoarse. Patricia alternated between rage and guilt. Her sister Linda tried to mediate, using words like misunderstanding and blended families are complicated. They're only complicated, I told her calmly, when one side is expected to bleed quietly. By February, foreclosure notices had started arriving at the house. Dad sent me a photo of one. I didn't respond. Then something unexpected happened. I got a call from the bank. Unknown number, Michigan area code. I answered against my better judgment. This is Marin from First National Bank, the woman said. I'm calling regarding the property at 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. I felt my shoulders tighten. I'm not the property owner, I said carefully. Yes, we're aware, she replied, but you're listed as an authorized contact. Of course I was. We've been unable to reach Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, she continued. The account is 3 months past due, and we're required to begin foreclosure proceedings. I closed my eyes. They're screening your calls, I said. Have you tried showing up in person? Yes, she admitted. No answer, though we saw lights on inside. There it was, the truth slipping out. I probably shouldn't say this, she added, lowering her voice, but this account was in serious trouble 3 years ago. It was only stabilized because someone began making substantial monthly payments directly to us. That was me, I said. Oh, she breathed. I'm not resuming payments, I continued. Those payments were always meant to be temporary. I understand, she said. Just so you know, if the account isn't brought current, the property will likely go to auction in April. Thank you, I said. I appreciate the transparency. When I hung up, Ethan was staring at me. April, he said quietly. They're really going to lose the house. Looks like it. How do you feel? I searched myself. Not for anger, not for guilt. Just the truth. Honestly, I said, I don't feel much of anything. He nodded. That's not cold, he said. That's healed. March brought escalation. Patricia somehow found my work email and sent a long, rambling message about how I was destroying their lives over a misunderstanding. I didn't respond. Then Brandon showed up at my house. I came home from work one evening and found him sitting on my front steps like he owned the place. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. This is our childhood home, he snapped. You're really going to let them lose it? Your childhood home? I asked. I was never really part of it. That was Mom being stupid, he said. You can't hold a grudge forever. I'm not holding a grudge, I replied. I'm just not paying your mortgage. He stood, trying to loom. You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry Mom made you sleep in the garage. There, happy? That's not an apology, I said. That's manipulation. His face hardened. Then screw you. I hope you're happy when we're living in a motel. I won't be happy or sad, I said. I'll be indifferent. That seemed to scare him more than anger ever could. He left, and I never saw him again. At the end of March, Dad called one last time. I almost didn't listen to the voicemail, but something about the timestamp made me press play. His voice was different, not pleading, just tired. Blair, he said quietly, the house is being auctioned next week. We're moving in with Linda. A pause. I'm sorry for all of it. I chose the easy path instead of the right one, and I lost my daughter because of it. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, breathing slowly. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. I just wanted you to know you were right. I didn't cry, but I saved the voicemail. April arrived quietly. No dramatic countdown, no last-minute heroics, just the steady, inevitable click of consequences lining up exactly where they were supposed to land. The auction was scheduled for a Tuesday. Ethan asked me that morning if I wanted to drive by the house, just to see. I shook my head. I don't need to, I said. I already know what it looks like. He didn't push. He never did. He just squeezed my hand before leaving for work, like he was anchoring me to the present instead of letting me drift backward into guilt. I went about my day like any other, answered emails, sat in meetings, ordered lunch I barely tasted. Somewhere between a project update and a budget review, a house I'd grown up in stopped being mine forever. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt finished. That afternoon, a text came in from Linda. The house sold. I stared at the screen. No emojis, no dramatics. Just the facts. They got enough to pay off the mortgage and walked away with about $20,000. We're letting them stay with us temporarily. I hope you're satisfied. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to defend. Was I satisfied? Not really. Satisfaction implies pleasure. This was closer to relief, like finally setting down a weight you didn't realize had reshaped your spine. That evening, Ethan made pasta. He always cooked on days he knew would be heavy, like he could feed the parts of me that had gone quiet. So, he said gently, is that it? For them, I replied, probably. For you? I thought about it. For me, I said, it's been over for a while. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I was standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, debating whether adulthood meant I should stop buying the sugary kind, when a voice said my name. Blair? I turned. Jake. A blast from childhood I hadn't thought about in years. He'd lived 3 houses down when we were kids, before his family moved to Colorado. We used to ride bikes together. He used to notice things. I heard about your dad's house, he said awkwardly. That sucks. You heard? I asked. Brandon's been posting about it nonstop, he said. About how you destroyed the family. I sighed. Of course he has. Jake shook his head. For what it's worth, I never bought it. That made me pause. You noticed? I asked. He laughed softly. Everyone noticed. Patricia wasn't subtle. Stephanie and Brandon got everything. You got expectations. The word hit harder than it should have. I thought maybe I was exaggerating, I admitted. Nope, he said. You were just surviving. We exchanged numbers. And I walked out of that store feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Validated. Not vindicated, not victorious. Just seen. That night, Ethan asked me if I had any regrets. I thought carefully. I regret that it ever got to that point, I said. I regret that I paid their mortgage for 3 years and never got appreciation because they didn't know. I regret that my dad chose silence over courage. But, he prompted gently, but I don't regret stopping. He nodded. Would you ever reconcile? With my dad? I said slowly. Maybe, if he ever owns all of it, not just the consequences. And the rest? I shook my head. That bridge isn't burned. It's gone. Salted. He smiled faintly. Fair. Life moved forward. Work got busier. Spring turned the city green again. And the story that had dominated my life for decades slowly lost its grip. Until 6 months after the auction, when a letter arrived. No return address I recognized. But I knew the handwriting immediately. Dad's. Inside was a check for $5,000. And a letter. Blair, this is the first installment. I got a second job. I'm using every extra dollar to pay you back. I know this doesn't come close to what you gave us, but it's a start. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a relationship. I just need you to know that I see it now. Patricia and I are separated. Stephanie and Brandon are working full-time for the first time. I'm in counseling. I've failed you as a father, and I'm ashamed it took losing everything to understand that. You don't have to cash this check. I sat on the couch for a long time, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. Ethan read over my shoulder, his hand warm on my back. What are you going to do? He asked. I'm going to cash it, I said finally, and I'm going to wait. The next month, another envelope arrived. Another $5,000. A shorter note. Then another. By the end of the year, Dad had sent $30,000. He also sent letters. No excuses, no requests. Just updates. Apologies. Ownership. We met for coffee twice. Not to rebuild the past. To build something honest, even if it was small. Patricia moved to Florida with Stephanie. Brandon stayed behind, working as a manager at a sporting goods store. Apparently, he was doing well. Patricia tried to reach out. I declined. Some doors closed softly. Others locked themselves. The strangest part of all of it was how light I felt. For 25 years, I'd been trying to earn love from people who had already decided what I was worth. When I stopped trying, everything got easier. Family, I learned, isn't who claims you when it's convenient. It's who makes room for you when it's cold. The envelopes kept coming. Not every week, not on a predictable schedule, but often enough that I stopped jumping when I saw unfamiliar handwriting in the mailbox. Each one was the same. A check, another apology, no demands. Just accountability. Dad never once asked me to call him, never hinted that he deserved forgiveness now that he was doing better. He simply documented his life like a man finally willing to be witnessed without a mask. He told me about the second job, late-night inventory work at a warehouse, about learning how to cook cheap meals, about therapy sessions where he had to say my name out loud and admit, sentence by sentence, that he had failed me long before the garage ever happened. He didn't write about Patricia much. When he did, it was factual. They were separated, living apart, talking through lawyers more than words. Apparently, when the money vanished, so did most of the marriage. Stephanie went with Patricia to Florida. Brandon stayed behind. Dad didn't defend them, didn't excuse them. That part surprised me the most. When we met for coffee the first time, Dad didn't cry. He didn't dramatize. He listened. It was awkward, stiff, like two adults meeting without a script for the first time. "I'm not trying to go back to how things were," he said quietly, hands wrapped around his mug. "I know that version of me doesn't deserve you." That sentence landed harder than any apology, because it didn't ask me to fix anything. It accepted reality. We talked for 40 minutes, about neutral things, about work, about the weather, about how strange it felt to sit across from each other without pretending. When we stood to leave, he didn't hug me. He waited. I nodded once. That was enough. The second coffee came months later. Better. Still careful. Still honest. I didn't tell him everything about my life. He didn't ask. He understood that proximity had to be earned now, not assumed. Meanwhile, the rest of the family faded. Patricia tried to reach out through Dad once, said she wanted to clear the air. I told him to tell her no. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Some people apologize to feel better, not to do better. I had already spent decades teaching myself to accept crumbs. I wasn't interested in a new flavor. Brandon never contacted me again. Stephanie blocked me everywhere, and I let them. That silence wasn't lonely. It was spacious. One night, months later, Ethan and I were lying in bed, the city quiet outside the windows. "Do you ever feel guilty?" he asked gently. "About the house?" I thought about it carefully. "No," I said. "I felt guilty for years while I was paying. That was the wrong direction." He smiled faintly. "You know most people would have snapped." "I didn't snap," I said. "I stopped." That distinction mattered. Stopping was deliberate, controlled, final. I didn't burn bridges. I simply refused to keep carrying them. The weirdest part was how quickly my body adapted once the burden was gone. My shoulders didn't ache the same way. I slept deeper. I stopped rehearsing conversations that would never happen. I wasn't waiting for approval anymore, and that changed everything. Part 6. What it feels like to put the weight down. It's been almost a year now. Almost a year since I slept in my Bentley in a garage that wasn't meant for me. Dad has sent $30,000 so far. He keeps working 2 jobs, keeps going to therapy, keeps writing letters that don't ask for anything in return. We're not close, but we're real. That's new. Patricia lives in Florida with Stephanie. I don't know if they're happy. I don't wonder much. Brandon is employed, stable. According to Dad, he's learning what responsibility feels like when no one cushions the fall. I wish them well, from a distance. Ethan and I moved in together last month. Not because of the drama, in spite of it. Because it felt easy. Because no one had to shrink or prove anything to earn space. Sometimes when I think back to that Christmas, I'm struck by how small the moment was that changed everything. Not the yelling, not the foreclosure, not the checks. It was a sentence. The guest rooms are for family. Because for the first time in my life, I believed them. And I acted accordingly. I stopped auditioning, stopped negotiating, stopped paying to be tolerated. And when I finally put that weight down, when I stopped trying to earn love from people who had already decided I wasn't worth it, I didn't become colder. I became lighter. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Family isn't who shares your last name. It's who would never ask you to sleep in the cold. And if you're still trying to prove you belong somewhere that keeps locking the door, you're allowed to leave. You're allowed to stop. And you're allowed to choose yourself